Hello class, I want to share something with you about how to use your calculator with some of these statistics that we've been looking at. So what I'm going to do is take these 60 pulse rates for students at a college seminar. I'm going to load them into my calculator, and we do that with the stat key. So I'm going to hit stat and then just choose the edit option, and I can choose any list I want. If I've got something in a list that I no longer need, I can go up to the arrow up to the top and hit clear. Then I hit enter down here. Just about fits. Okay, hang on one sec. All right, so I'm going to enter all 60 of these pulse rates up here, and I'll be back with you in a moment. All right, continuing on here, I've entered all 60 pulse rates into this list one. So if you look down here, it says L1, and the next slot available is 61. So if I arrow up here, I see the last value I entered was in slot 60. To get out of your list editor, you're just going to do a second quit. Remember, to get into it, you're going to hit stat, edit, and now my new list is here. I can get to the last item by going up twice. It'll wrap around, and right now it's not sorted in any special manner. It doesn't really need to be. So I'm going to quit out of that. First thing I want to show you is how to get one variable statistics. So for this variable of pulse rates, I'm going to hit the stat key again and arrow over to the calc menu. And this very first item, 1-bar stats, is going to give us a lot of information about the data that we just entered into list one. So I'm going to hit enter on 1-bar stats and make sure that my list one is chosen. If I had edited a different list, like list 5, I would choose second 5, and that would change my list up here to list 5. I put it in list 1, so I want to go ahead and choose list 1. And then I'm going to hit enter, and we need to leave this second blank here for frequency list. We don't use that for this, so we want to just delete anything that might be in there and then go down to calculate and hit enter. Okay, so the very first value it gives us is X bar, which is the mean. So we know that pulse rate data has a mean of 73.73 if I round to 2 decimal places. Coming down to these two, there's an S sub X and a sigma sub X. Now, if you remember that you calculate the mean the same way for a population as you do for just a sample. So X bar covers both mu and X bar, but they just call it X bar because most of the time we're working with samples instead of populations. This is the population because it's all of the students in the college seminar. So coming down to the standard deviation, there's two readings. There's S sub X and sigma sub X. I use S sub X when I've entered a sample. If I know what I've entered is the entire population, you'll use the parameter, the population standard deviation, which they call in your calculator sigma sub X. So notice that the population standard deviation is slightly lower than the sample standard deviation, and that's because if you remember in the formula, in the sample they divide by n minus 1. In the population, they divide by the population size n. Okay, and then our sample size is the n. We've got other things. It's generated for us the minimum value in our data set, the first quartile, Q1, the median of our data set, 72, the third quartile, Q3, and the max. Okay, so you can scroll up and down and revisit each of these values, but that's some good information, right? Next thing I want to show you is going to be how to create a histogram from that data. So what I'm going to do, remember for a classed histogram, we have a lower class limit and we have a class width. So what we're going to do is I've looked at this data, and the 53 or so. Like I can actually, here's another thing you can do if you want to. If you want to go to your stat and then come down here and sort in ascending order, the second option will sort your list. So choose sort A and then choose the list. So second one for L1. And then when you hit enter, it's just going to say done. And now if I go back to stat edit to look at my list, it's in sorted order. So I can see right here that the smallest data value is going to be the 53. And so since that's the case, and the largest data value is going to be 113. So I'm going to create a lowest lower class limit of 50. And we'll use a class width of 10. So since these pulse rates are all, we'll go from 50 to 59. Okay, since there's no decimal included, this will be accurate enough. And then the next class will start at 60. And it'll go through 6 to 69. Another thing you can do is instead of 59, you can say less than 60. Right, so either one of those are okay. And then you start at 60. So if 60 is in the data, it's actually going to be included in this class. And so in order to capture this 113, since I'm counting by tens, I'm going to need to get to a last class that starts at 110 and goes up to 119. All right, now I don't need another class, but if I needed one more class, it would start at 120. That's an important number, even though it's not going to show up in our frequency table. Okay, so let's quit out of this. And now I'm going to take the data and go to stat plot. And I'm going to enter on plot 1. First, you want to hover over it and turn it on. And we're going to do this type of graph here. The histogram is the little rectangles side by side. So we're going to choose that. It needs the list we're going to use. It's already defaulted to list 1, but in case you have to select it, you'll do it as your blue key. All right. And then, okay, so we're done establishing what kind of plot we want. So let's quit out of that. Now what we have to do is create a window based on our lowest lower class limit and that what would be the next lower class limit if I needed an extra class. Okay, so these are important. And then the class width is 10. Okay, so I'm going to go to my window, and for my X min, I'm going to put that 50 in. So we want X min to be the lowest lower class limit where everything starts. X max, I don't want to put 119, I want to put 120, what would be the next lower class limit, even though it's not part of our table. So I'm going to put the 120 here for X max, and that's going to allow us to see all of the rectangles on our screen. Now for our X scale, that's where we want to put the class width. So I'm using a class width of 10. I'm going to change X scale to 10. Now Y min and max, Y is going to contain how tall the buildings are, how tall the rectangles are, because that's how many are in each class. So we don't really need negative 10. We can put 0, which is going to be the bottom, and then based on this data, what's the largest amount they're going to fit in any class? I don't know, but I'm going to make an estimate of that we could fit. None of my classes are going to contain more than 25. Okay, so we just want to fit the rest of the rectangles, and then we'll leave everything else alone. And then you can hit your graph, and bingo, we've got the histogram with our lowest lower class limit of 50, and up here it's 119 at the end, but 120 is where we end it. So this class goes from, well, you can do that. It looks just like a picture now, but you want to see what the data is. So you'll hit your trace key, and then trace is going to tell you for whichever this little cursor's sitting on top of, that its min is 50 and its max is less than 60. And the number in that class are 8 pulse rates. Arrow over, to the next one, and it gives you the same information. This time the min is 60 and the max is less than 70. And in this particular class, there are 16 student pulse rates. Here we've got 20 that begin at 70 and stay below 80, and so on. So you could pretty quickly build your histogram by putting the data in the list and setting up the plot.